I did two pilots that never got picked up. One was a sitcom and one was I guess like kind of like a Grey's Anatomy ripoff. They didn't go. And I was Mr. Guest Star. There was a time where I was doing a movie in New Orleans and there were 3 guest stars airing at the same day, 3 different networks that I had done on like a Wednesday at 8 p.m. And my mom was like, which one do I watch? I was like, I don't know. CBS, ABC, NBC. I was on all 3. And it was one of these weird things where I was doing a lot of guest stars and a lot of commercials. And when Sons came, Sons is a strange story. I auditioned for every single role in Sons. Like when I say every role, I started with Jax. I went down the line and I didn't get anything. And Wendy O'Brien, who was the casting director, had just cast me in 2 things. One was a show, Medical Investigation, with Neil McDonough, that I did like a guest spot on and she loved. And one was this Chris Carter movie that never came out called Bellflower. Chris Carter, creator of the X-Files.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. She was championing for me on Sons, but I didn't get it. And I was like, and it was a weird time in my life because my uncle, who was the single most biggest influence on me to this day, he moved to Northern California when he was 21, when my grandfather died. He left New York and he became like a bit of like a biker. He was a rockabilly biker. And then he worked at San Quentin and then he got caught dealing drugs and he went into San Quentin as a prison. Like it was like this whole crazy story. And he was the most colorful human being I'd ever met in my life. And he would sit there while we would go for walks when I was in New York and he would just talk to me about these motorcycle clubs. And he would give me like the history of it. And this is years before. So I was under the impression that Sons was like my destiny because he died in 2004 when I was doing this movie in Toronto. I'd found out he died at the wrap party. So I was like, oh, I'm supposed to do this show. But I didn't get it. And then about a week later, I got a call from Wendy O'Brien. She said, hey, Kurt, the creator, wants to talk with you. And I was like, okay. She's like, just talk to him. He has an idea for something. I was like, okay. And he's really short with the way he talks. And he goes, listen, I don't know if you'll be in 1 episode or 100. I don't know if you'll have 1 line or 100. I don't know. I just want you on the show. And I was like, okay. He's like, but we don't have any money. And but I just want you on the show. And I was like, okay. So I went back and I was testing for another pilot at the time. And I told my manager at the time, they left me after this. I said, I'm going to do that show. And they're like, no, you're not. It's like $0. You're testing. I said, no, I'm going to do that show. And I did. And I got made a regular in the 2nd season. And my entire life changed. I met my wife through it. My whole life. My whole existence.
You met your wife on set?
No, when I went over to Iraq and Kuwait, Baghdad, like we did all the USO tours.
Right.
My wife, she was a former news anchor and she was doing PR for military charities. She started with Marcus Luttrell and them, and then she was doing stuff for the boot campaign. And we met through that. And a couple of years later, we kind of met, again. And now we have 2 kids and we live on a ranch in Texas. So again, it all came from, like everything else, like all my other jobs came from Sons and came from that moment of like Wendy taking a chance and Kurt taking a chance and me taking a chance.
Yeah. How would you sum it up? Like if you had to sum up Sons of Anarchy for all those years you did it. I mean, it was probably grueling schedule and a lot of work, right?
Absolute chaos, but I have it no other way. It was like Charlie and I just said when we did that Reaper review thing with Kim and I, it was like going to college. Like for me, I was around these, for me, again, I love character actors. It's weird because I would think all actors are characters, but whatever. I love character actors. And I think it's like when I saw Ron Perlman and Kim Coates and Tommy Flanagan and Katie Seagal and like, and I did the original pilot with Scott Glenn, like who I had done a movie with prior to that. I was enthralled. I was also a giant fan of The Shield. So I was like so happy to be there. Chaos. It was absolute chaos. When I did Luke Cage right after it, I had the same executive producer writer who was on that show with me. And it was also the showrunner had done this movie. I did Lowriders. He wrote that. I was almost like, I rescue all my dogs. And so I know what it's like. I was like a dog who just got rescued, where they were like, hey, it's okay. It's okay. They just need you on set. Like, it's okay. Cause it was like, I was so tense all the time from Sons, all the time.
Really? Just tense with wanting to be great, wanting it to work. What was it?
It was like a heavy show. Like, it was heavy in all aspects. It was, I could talk about the positives for days. Like, I don't know what it's like to be in the Rolling Stones or the Beatles or be in like a rock band, like even a minimal one. But like when we were together, and we were together all the time on our bikes, going to Comic-Cons, going to restaurants, going to bars, it was like being rock stars. Like, you would just roll up 11 deep and everyone was in the show. And people were like, what the fuck is happening here?